Do you think it's changed in fundamental ways since we were there? Or?
No. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's as good as it's ever been. I think it has learned. I think going to court in 2000 gave Summerhill a deeper understanding of itself, and it had to look at what it does and how it does everything in a way that Neil never had to do. And in a modern world, that's what you have to do. So when I'm talking about the paperwork we do, you know, we aren't rebels. We're not sitting there going, oh, we're not going to do this and we're not going to do that, because we want to save our rebelliousness for things that really matter, like the kids don't have to go to lessons. Like we had an inspection in 2016, which was a very successful inspection. And then the Department for Education suddenly came along and said, you've got girls and boys on the same corridor and you're not allowed to do that. And we said, that's what we will fight for. So we have all the paperwork they want. We've got reams and reams of policies and bloody knows what, but we will fight for these really important fundamentals. We have boys and girls on the same corridor. That's what we do. That's what makes it work at Summerhill. That's why our boys and girls go out of Summerhill feeling equal. That's why we don't have a lot of nonsense about women and men and unfair pay and all that kind of crap, because actually they grow up to be equals because they live together on the top corridor. So we invited the Department for Education to come and have a look, and they came and have a look, and they were actually very impressed with what they saw. And they said that we had to write reams and reams about how our meetings are risk assessments every week, and how, you don't know what we had to write, but we did it. And they said, yeah, you can carry on doing that, provided you keep the safeguards in place that you have shown us. Wow. So that's what we want to fight for. We want to fight for the important things. And there's no point in buggering about saying, oh, we won't do this and we won't do that because that's one of our principles. It's not our principles. Our principles are the really basic, important ones, and that's what we want to fight for.
Fabulous. Great. Okay, so it sounds like you're engaging in their language, but saying what you need to say when you need to say it.
Well, we hope to. We try to.
It feels like Summerhill and its philosophy has become more accepted now. Do you think that's true?
I think in a way it probably has, actually. I think Summerhill, it's almost 100 years old, and I think people are beginning to think, well, actually, maybe it's not so bad, but it's still incredibly controversial, and it's very easy for us to, because most of the people, we have regular visitors days every term with about sort of 40 to 50 people visiting, and it's very easy to get lulled into this kind of world where people all approve of Summerhill. We get masses of emails. We've got nearly 11,000 people following us on Facebook, which if you look at other English boarding schools like Eton and things, I mean, it's way ahead. But at the same time, you have to be a little bit careful not to think you are just this wonderful school that's really famous and everybody loves you, because most of the people out there don't really love you. Most of the people out there don't think that Summerhill's a good idea. Right. And you do have to remind yourself of that from time to time.
Let's move on to that now, because that was a big thing. The Ofsted, the government thing. First, I think it was, when was that?
The Ofsted case was we went to court in the year 2000, in March 2000.
March 2000?
Mm-hmm.
Really? That long ago?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2016, you had this big, a good approval by an Ofsted inspection.
Well, we've had several inspections since then. They've all been good, actually. But we actually moved. There was when we went to court, we came to the government capitulated. They didn't admit that they capitulated, but they did. They came to us on the third day and said, we'd like to get into discussions with you. And so we put together a document which would safeguard the school in a way against Ofsted, and Ofsted agreed. The government agreed with that. The Department for Education agreed with it, and it was ratified by the judges in the tribunal. So we came out of that with this document, and then I think it was in 2016, the Department for Education wrote to us and said, we're now abandoning that document. And we went, well, you can't, because it's a court document. And they went, oh yes, we can, because we're the government and we can do what we want to do. So we then felt that that our relationship with Ofsted had fallen down irretrievably, really, and we then moved to the private school inspectorate, which is called ISI, Independent Schools Inspectorate, which we had always steered clear of because A, it's terribly expensive, and B, we just didn't want to be elitist. But the reality is we are an independent school and you can't get around that. So we decided that you have to join something called the Independent Schools Association, which we did. And then we've had 2 inspections now by the Independent School Inspectorate. And they are, their brief is, they still have to answer to the Department of Education. So they still are very similar to Ofsted, but they are more kind of prepared to look at the ethos of each individual school and to kind of pay some lip service to that. So their brief is kind of, this is what you tell parents you offer. They are paying you. Are you giving them what you say you're giving them? That's kind of their brief.
Okay.
And they were very pleased with us. But it's interesting to note that they are getting more and more gobbled up by the Department of Education and Ofsted. I think governments are all trying to move away from independent schools because they're seen as elitist. So they're all trying to sort of pacify the general public, and that's fine. But unfortunately, Summerhill has to be an independent school because no government would fund it anyway. So we're between the devil and the blue sea. We don't want to be an independent school, but we can't survive if we're not.
Okay, it sounds like you're treading between those two well. So the CBBC thing, Jon East, how did that happen?
I was approached actually by one of the executive producers, whose name has slipped my mind just at the moment, but his mother is a Summerhill. And so when he approached me, Greg Brenman called, he approached me to talk about it. I said to him, well, I know you're going to do a good job because otherwise your mother will never speak to you again.
Okay.
Jon East was someone who's always been interested in Wilhelm Reich, who was a contemporary and friend of my father's. And he had been in touch with another ex-Summerhill staff who was also interested in Wilhelm Reich. And Jon East had been given the job of director of children's television on the BBC. And according to legend, he said he would take the job provided that he could make a film about Summerhill. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Jon East remains a very good friend of mine, but I've never asked him if that story is true. So, so Alison, who wrote the script, she wrote the script. She got a BAFTA for the script, and she kept sending us copies of it. So she would send us copies, and we would go. I mean, obviously, you have to understand this is a drama, and a lot of it is not going to be very true to reality. But we would be able to look at something and go, whoa, that would just never happen here. So she changed it. She kept changing it as she sent it to us.
Was that a fascinating process to go through?
Well, I mean, the best process was that they came to film at Summerhill for a fortnight. So we had a complete team of actors and technicians and everybody at the school for 2 weeks with our pupils during the holidays we had about 30 of our pupils stayed on after end of term to be extras in the film. And that was a really lovely experience. Exhausting, but really lovely.
Beautiful. Wow.
And the film is full of, I mean, I wince a lot when I see it for bits and pieces of stuff, but actually as a portrayal of Summerhill, it's the only way you can portray Summerhill is through drama. You cannot make a documentary that can show the depth of feeling and love that children have for their school. And that documentary made, well, anybody who watched it would have a tear. And you couldn't watch it without shedding a tear.
Interesting.
And that's really, really important, I think, that it was able to do that. And I looked at it and it explains Summerhill very well. There's nothing really wrong with it. I mean, of course, it's a drama. It's a children's drama, but it's still very well done.
Well, I've watched a few.
So it's only 4 episodes, so it's really worth it. If you get the link off our website, it goes straight to Jon East Vimeo channel.
Okay, well, that's beautiful. So there was a good personal connection, and did they do research, or they just kind of wrote it and you would nick something?
Well, Alison did some. I mean, she obviously had to. She got the court transcripts. They had the court transcripts so they could go through the court case. And obviously she talked to me a lot about it, but you didn't have to do any more history than that, really, just to go back to the court case, because that's what it was about.
Okay.
Have a hanky.
Have a hanky. And Jon said he wouldn't take the position unless he could do that.
Well, that was the story we had.
Okay.
Whether it's true or not, I don't know. He said, I will become director of children's television, but I want to make a film about summer. It was one of the conditions, so we heard.
That's beautiful. We'll see if it's true. Students, I guess when I was there, it's mostly a lot of Germans, of course, a lot of English, French. Is it more Asian now?
Well, we have Asian kids. We've got kids from Japan, from South Korea, quite a number from China. We have to be a bit careful not to overdo the Chinese option because you don't want too many because they come as non-English speakers, and that can be quite a problem. And also, I'm not quite sure how much the Chinese parents really understand about Summerhill. I expect during your time as well, you'd get a child suddenly from somewhere like Japan, and they would be here, and you'd suddenly get this feeling of actually the parents may have just been looking for an English boarding school and sent their kid here, and when the kid gets here, there's no way they're going to tell them about it. So you sometimes get that feeling with some of the Chinese kids. You think, maybe they're looking through, an English dictionary of schools, and they come to this one, which has got really cheap fees compared to the others, and probably, we'll give that one a try. And when their kid gets here, they think, I'm not telling my dad that I don't have to go to lessons.
It also sounds happy. They're big on happy. Summerhill.
Exactly. I'll just make a bit of a joke of that, but we sometimes get that feeling. But so we got quite a number of Chinese kids. We got German kids. We got Spanish. We have quite a few Spanish kids.
Okay.
We've got one from America. They come from all over really. Recently we had some from Brazil. I mean, they just come from all over.
Okay.
And a lot now from places they wouldn't have been when you were here, which of course is Eastern Europe. So we've got Hungarian kids, Russian kids, kids from I can't think of some of the Eastern.
Great. The Baltic countries are great because they're kind of slightly less spoiled than the West.
Yeah,
sort of
so
incubated. Okay, that's just because I sensed that there may be more Asian. I walked into the National History Museum and there was like film about various documentaries, and one of them was like Henry and all these Summerhill kids by chance. I didn't know it, but he was getting married and a mock wedding. And
so that film was called Summerhill at 70. It was made by a couple of anthropologists. It was a complete hatchet job, the whole thing.
So you didn't like it?
We didn't like it because it wasn't true. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was made by, the people who made it sold it to Channel 4, a series called Cutting Edge, which we were not kind of aware of at the time. And it was one of the very first kind of fly-on-the-wall documentaries that actually were made. And so the implications of it at that time didn't really hit me. I would never I think it's actually immoral to film children like that now, so I wouldn't actually allow that ever again. But at that time, in those days, fly-on-the-wall documentaries, they were very new.
Generally, I saw another film called Dazed and Confused, and it struck me about both those films that...
What? Dazed?
Dazed is a Linklater film. He did this. It was more a film drama about coming of age in America.
Oh, yeah, so it wasn't about Summerhill.
No. But it did strike me in both those things. I was taken by the impression I got was that, my God, I thought it was all so personal to us. All these characters, and it was like I was seeing different faces in different roles. But there was a sort of a play that was ongoing. And we'd just been there for a while. Such a weird, I don't know if it's too abstract, but do you see the sort of archetypes or generations change, but people fill roles or...
Well, I think the thing that what you notice really is that kids don't change at all, really. I mean, kids, I think the problem is people talk about the younger generation and the modern generation and say, things are different now because of this and because of that. And what people don't really recognize is the fact that it's taken us millions and millions of years to get where we are. Evolutionarily, it's taken us millions of years. And you don't just change people's needs and desires and loves and hates in 20 or 30 years of civilization. So we are the same now as we were 100 years ago, 600 years ago, 800 years ago. Our needs as human beings are still just exactly the same. So when you take Summerhill over the last sort of 30 or 40 years, the school's changed in that children have computers and stuff now, but the fundamentals of the school haven't changed at all. Kids still want to play. That's what kids want to do. They need to play. And in so playing, they squabble and they get on with each other and they don't get on with each other and they do some sort of silly things and they don't do some silly things. And And that's the way it bowls along. And I think that there's much more of an expectation in the meetings for kids to have a more peaceful life. And this is coming from the children themselves, not from the adults. I think that children now, if I look at the cases that are being brought up in the meeting, I often have a little smile, which I have to wipe off my face, about what would be the pettiness of people that people are bringing each other up for now, which 20 years ago they wouldn't have done. 20 years ago they'd have just had an argument about it and walked off, and they would have just got on with it. And now...
You're not seeing that, you're seeing disrespect.
When you were at Summerhill, I expect people stole each other's stuff quite a lot.
There was a couple of naughty boys. One of them is in this Generations thing, but he's a dear friend. Boys will get up to mischief, but mostly from the tuck room or...
I mean, that just doesn't happen now. I go to school now. I never lock my car because nobody's going to go and get stuff out of it. It just doesn't happen. Okay. So it's just a different expectation of what people want and what not. Nowadays, you'll get a kid will bring someone else up because he badmouthed my mother. And I think, wow, when I was at school, you'd never have brought somebody up for that. You might have walloped them or shouted at them, but you wouldn't have brought them up for it. But now it's like, he said my mother was a whore. That's terrible.
That's pretty bad, though, but still.
Well, yeah. But
sticks and stones, like you said.
Your mother can't hear it. It's just very funny how those things have changed. But it's still the same. It's still the same fight, but it's just about different things.
Well, it's funny. It's very lovely to hear that from you, because I could see now Ina sitting in that with a smile on her face that was like, what the hell are these people talking about? So it's a relative thing, and it may be changing. We may be a little more snowflakey or whatever they call that, a little more gentle and delicate as we get older. Yeah.
The thing is, what I always try to say to ex-pupils is it's fun to come to reunions and catch up with all of your friends and have a nice time, but really you should come and visit in term time, because when you visit in term time, you see the continuum of it. And I think in a way, for all of us Summerhillians, it gives us a real feeling of kind of peace to know that this thing that mattered so much to us as kids is still doing what it did, and it's still bowling on, and the kids there are still getting stuff out of it. It's just lovely to see what's happening now. I don't like that Summerhillians do all this old reminiscing and don't actually keep up with what's happening now. And I think it's very reassuring for Summerhillians to see that it's still going on.
You're concerned about our psychological welfare. It's probably true. It probably grounding, connects us with reality.
It's an important part, something's been a really important thing in your life. It's important to see, to know that it's still happening and it's still doing its job. And
interesting.
It's really good.
It's actually quite deep psychology there. Very interesting. Okay.
Oh, hang on. I can't come for a moment because I'm on a Skype call. I might have to go because someone's just come to see me, a neighbour.
Okay, we can wrap it up if you want.
Can we reconvene another time, or do you want to just wrap up?
I think that's fine. We can reconvene, but there's only 2 or 3 more questions. So
okay. Well, you can always give me another Skype in a day or two. I'm on holiday now, but I need to go because someone's just called in.
Okay, darling. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
Such a pleasure. Not at all.
Look forward to seeing you. Come and see us sometime soon.
I'd love to. Take care.